Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about episode 9 of the anime series Net-Juu no Susume. And I really loved Motoko's reaction to all of this. Picking up right where we left off, that very much weighty moment where Yuta has let it all hang out. Not only is he Hearth, but he's Lily as well. He has been all along. And I voiced my concerns, my fears that she would recoil, that she would not palate this very well, and she might feel manipulated and that kind of thing. And I was fearful of that, and I think Yuta himself was fearful of that. But that's not how she reacts at all. She's actually kind of grateful, kind of excited, shocked, of course. But so much of it, like, the other leg drops in her mind, so much of it seems to suddenly make sense, I think, to her. And, but of course, Yuta himself, he's fearing the worst, even in that moment. Even that shocking reaction. I love all of Motoko's reactions in this episode, especially, but all throughout the series. She constantly is reminding me of Watamote, of Tomoko Kuroki, from Watamote, which was one of the earliest allusions to another anime I made about this show and her character. All the hilarious reactions. She's like, she gives a start, and she's like, her hands are just frozen there, and she's got like this expression of just awe, and like she's dumbstruck. And it is the most hilarious thing, but she's excited about this. She's not turned off by it. She doesn't feel manipulated. In fact, again, like I say, she feels grateful. She feels like, if I were in his place, I don't know if I could have come running to see to the well-being of this other person I care about. And this is something Yuta has done. And of course, I love the questioning and the feeling each other out about how this all came together, how Yuta figured it out, how he figured out she was Hayashi and all this kind of stuff. And he admits to having that suspicion, and it wasn't something he forged for himself for sure until he showed up during that date that she had set with Koiwai, and she had shown up a day early inadvertently, or perhaps per Koiwai's purposefully doing so, setting the date, the date's wrong or whatever like that, misleading her. But whatever the case is, Yuta showed up there, and that's when he finally put two and two together. He finally was able to understand that, okay, Hayashi is Motoko and all this stuff, and he's kind of been between a rock and a hard place all this while, because he's trying to sort of talk himself out of believing it and not being sure if he's, succumbing to coincidence and just wishful thinking. And both of these characters, this episode was lively and fun and vivacious in parts, but it was also heartbreaking in parts, because both of these characters have such unchecked anxiety, and it's something I can highly relate to, and something that I feel cut from the same cloth, kind of sort of, in having had to deal with those kinds of anxieties in my life. I am sure, much as Yuta starts backpedaling himself and talking himself out of this after having this great rapport with Motoko, her being accepting of all of this newfound information and wishing they could play the game more and continue to be friends and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure I have found myself in his place at times in my life, and even perchance ruined potential relationships I might have had with girls I had interest in and had a mutual interest in me, because of things I was dealing with, and because I just couldn't bring myself to be courageous enough to pursue it, because of my anxieties, which very literally would put a halt on my every move, on all momentum. Forward, backward, sideways, whatever. Any which direction I could go, I was frozen in place. And that's kind of what both Yuta and Motoko are going through. Motoko, she's being given this newfound sort of renaissance of her own life, in a sense, as an extension of the MMO, of going online and harboring a completely different personality to whom she really is. But because she knows Yuta in the real physical world, it gives her this out, this room to be able to plume up her feathers and be a little more free with herself. And yet, even she, much as is the case with Yuta, even she has those anxieties. Severe though they may be, thinking she's homely, she's unattractive, she's unkempt, she doesn't wear fashionable clothing. All these things that, it's a facade anyway. It doesn't really matter anyway. What matters is that you do things to make yourself feel good about yourself as much as possible. And unfortunately, it goes both ways, whether you're male or female or transgender, whatever you identify as. Every single human being on this planet goes through these kinds of self-conscious anxieties where they're very critical about what they look like, what their appearance is, what others perceive them to be, the judgments of others. And I myself was plagued with this for a very long time. And even now, even to this day, sometimes, much more rarely, but sometimes I still can look at myself and think the worst. And thus dial myself back, unintentionally, but because of those anxieties. And that's what both of these characters are kind of doing. With their going and running into each other because of Koiwai's intervention. Koiwai, the man, broski. I want to give him a fist pump. Because he knows what's going on, and he was totally Cupid's arrow in this episode, getting them both together, knowing that Yuta is drinking himself silly because he feels rejected. Because he feels like, it's a combination of his own anxieties, his own fears, and feeling stressed and put upon, and like he's taken advantage of Motoko and all these kinds of things, the guilt. But it's also the fact that she, I think, in any case, this is my interpretation, it's also the fact that she pointedly said, let's continue to be friends. And there's that moment when he parts ways with her during the first half of the episode, and the newspapers go flittering in the breeze. And he says, but, ... And my own inner monologue took over, and I said to myself, but I wish we could be more. Yes, let's be friends, but I wish we could be so much more. So much more to each other. They're so much more for each other, and all these things. And it's at that moment, and especially toward the end of the episode, that I myself, the viewer, was beginning to fear that there's going to be a somewhat ambiguous ending to this. With only 10 episodes and based on the PV for the next, I'm beginning to fear that, much like one of my all-time favorite movies, Before Sunrise, an Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy film, you spend time with these characters all through this movie, and then it ends ambiguously where they have to part ways, but they make a promise, a vow to each other that they will come back a year later and find each other again, and the movie ends, and you never know for sure whether or not that's going to happen. Of course, they have made subsequent films, Before Sunset, and I forget what the third one was, like 10 years between them. And with Before Sunset, the sequel, it sort of says, well, no, they never actually met back up again, but, now they've gotten back together, they found each other again. And then that movie ends ambiguously as well. Are they going to stay together now and all this kind of stuff? And then the third one kind of craps all over that. I digress. But I'm fearful that this show, where I really want a plain stated fruition, where I really want a genuine culmination that sees Yuta and Motoko coming together in more than just the MMO framework, and more than just playing that game, and more than just friendship. I really want to see them make their vows to each other, confess their love for each other, plan to live the rest of their lives together with each other. And I'm fearing there's going to be a hopeful hopefully romantically sort of, but ambiguous ending. That's what I'm fearful of. I'm fearful of they're going to leave it to the viewer to decide, does it work out for them in the end? Do they stay together? Do they get closer together? Maybe, maybe not. It remains to be seen. With one episode left, it could very well end with a happily ever after, and they've come together and they stay together. With where we leave the episode, it's raining on them, and that's where we see that confession from Motoko that she feels embarrassed being around Yuta and feels like undeserved of him, his attentions, his affections, and that she can only be an embarrassment to him. It's those anxieties, it's the same anxieties that kept him keeping her at arm's length, not picking up with the game again, even after they revealed all to each other. He was so scared and he was so guilt-ridden, and he didn't want to burden her anymore. That's what he felt like he was to her. That's what she very much feels like she is to him. And it's just, watching it, that's what makes them so right for each other. They are very much the same in more ways than one, and they have enough differences about them that they can learn things about each other and about themselves through each other and their interactions and their closeness and their support of each other. And that's why I so desperately, the hopeless romantic in me just wants the fruition. I just want the happily ever after, to see them come together and to not have to be left begging the question. To not have that ambiguity, overhanging the ending. I want to see it. I want to see it legitimized, and I'm hoping we will, but I'm fearful we won't. But as I say, very much still, he brings her back to his apartment because of the rain, sharing his coat to keep her as dry as possible, and he's going to give her lunch, make her some kind of food. They are both terrified out of their ever-loving gourds. That she went along with his suggestion, that he even suggested to begin with, her coming back to his place, and she's taking a shower. And I love, again, the expression she's looking in the mirror and the horrified face that she, what am I doing here? Again, shades of Tomoko Kuroki from Watamote. Motoko really feels like an adult, having evolved, having grown up, and gotten a little more mature. Tomoko Kuroki to me. I've said that since the very beginning of this series. And my heart breaks for them. I just want them to be one. I want them to be united, and have it be official, have it be legitimized, not have it ambiguous and leave us all wondering and hoping and thinking, in our heart of hearts, well, they probably did, but not having the official culmination, the official realization of that happening. Because I love these two. I love them so much. I just want to see them share the love they have for each other and legitimize that and state it plainly between them. And so this was kind of a roller coaster episode for me. I didn't expect it to be, where I began the episode really joyous and bouncing off the walls, and then there was this very tepid, almost depressive quality. Then it was joyous again, seeing Koi Y intervene and getting them back together, and then leaving the episode sort of pseudo-ambiguously, where it's like, okay, how are we going to finish out the story? I don't think... I think it's been a long time since I've been this invested in the romance of two fictional characters like this, where it's like I'm banking on the legitimacy of their confession of love for each other. But that's how endeared this show is and all of its characters is to me. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 9 of Net-Juu no Susume, if you've seen it as well, if you agree with me, if you have a completely different take on it all, speculations about where you think it'll go in the finale episode, which I can't believe we only have one left. So many other shows undeserved 12 and 13 episodes, and this one gets 10. But yeah, I guess we shall see in a week's time how this all plays out. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, whatever your take happens to be. It's all about the topic of talk and talking about this great show. And so yeah, Otherwise, I hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you all later. Peace.